Well, it's the first Sunday of October football, guys, and I'm really excited for it. This early game has been, probably how a lot of us expected it to go. Jets are getting crushed, and Jets honestly are just like, they can't do anything offensively right now. I've been kind of I was watching it a little bit before I went live, and just keeping an eye on it right now. And the Jets realistically can't get anything going offensively. It looks really, really bad right now for the Jets. But nonetheless, we've got lots of updates to go through before game time, and we're making last-minute lineup decisions right now. So make sure to drop a like on the video, subscribe to the channel to show your support, and while we wait for some questions to fill up, we'll go ahead and go through some injuries that are going to be important for us to keep an eye on this morning, and some important news updates that we can also discuss as well. So, starting out with Aaron Jones, for those of you who played Aaron Jones this morning, he's obviously on the sidelines with a hip injury. I don't think that, I was watching him running on the sidelines, and he looks gimpy for sure. He was trying to do some runs on the sidelines, doing high knees and stuff like that. He was ended up just kind of gimpy and limping around. So I don't really like the prospects for his return that much, to be honest with you. So not a very good look over there for for Aaron Jones, for the very least. Again, Antonio Gibson, he's going to be playing today. Not just playing, he will be starting for the New England Patriots. So make sure to ask a question if you're asking about Antonio Gibson, who should you start, him or Trey Sermon? For example, that's a one I would personally start Trey Sermon in. But there's a lot of questions that we'll need to go through with Antonio Gibson. Dameon Pierce is going to miss today in all likelihood. So that means Houston running backs. I prefer Dare Ogunbowale. Cam Akers is definitely still flexible because he's handling the majority of the carries. So again, that's just a personal preference for me based on red zone usage and based on pass catching usage. Dare Ogunbowale has the higher upside opportunities than Cam Akers does. David Njoku in line to come back today, which is great news for everybody who needs a tight end, because the landscape is rough right now for most of us. So David Njoku being back is definitely a very, very good thing. Brian Robinson Jr., I read that he's tracking to play. So that's good. Hopefully he won't be a game time call, I guess. And we'll get some news here in the next couple of minutes about Brian Robinson or something like that. So I'm reading that he should be available, which is great. So let's go ahead and start diving into some of y'all's questions right now. Again, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel if you appreciate the videos. I'm keeping an eye on the Jets and Vikings game as well. Side note, for those of you who played Vikings defense, we're looking good on the Vikings defense this morning. It's looking like a successful story. All right. Live Creation, what's going on, my man? Good to see you in here. Chaludo, what's going on, man? Good to see you in here. Mandras Delisil. Probably butchered that, but I see your question. Najee or Moss? I'm going Zach Moss personally, because with Najee, I've been talking about it for most of the week, which is, listen, Najee's got an issue right now that is completely... it's actually more than one issue. Najee's big issue right now is that he has lost all fantasy upside through target opportunities and red zone opportunities being taken away from him, right? So, he's getting a decent amount of targets, by numbers, but for the most part, he hasn't been able to do anything with them because, he's not an explosive player. Right? He's just not very explosive. So, unless he's getting hammered, peppered with targets, or unless he's getting in the end zone, it's just kind of, it doesn't really matter that much. So, I'm personally not big on Najee anytime. This week, I really do like Zach Moss, though. Zach Moss, it's not that I really do like him. It's just that I think the Bengals are getting better offensively. And I want a running back that's tied to the Cincinnati Bengals, personally. I think that there's lots of opportunities for Cincinnati Bengal running backs. And this week I'm expecting points, and so is Vegas. So I just would rather take the shot on the running back on the better team, the better offense, and with more upside to score. And I think that guy is Zach Moss right now for sure. Alexis Bolanos, Darnold doing me so wrong, man. Well, he just toss a touchdown? No, they ran it in. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, he's not looking good. He threw an interception already too, so Darnold is definitely going to have to claw back. I honestly, I don't know though. Like, I can't tell you because the way the Jets look offensively, like, I don't know how they're going to score more than 3 points. I mean, they have looked atrocious this morning. I mean, the run game is not doing anything again. And by the way, Braylon Allen's not doing anything either. So it's not just Breece Hall. It's the whole collective. I mean, Aaron Rodgers is having to improvise and do some stuff to just get them a couple first downs. I mean, it looks bad. It looks really, really bad. And he's already tossed 2 picks. Let's get an update on that game really quick while we're talking about it. So the Jets did score a touchdown. Rodgers tossed one to Lazard, okay? But running backs, Breece Hall, 4 carries for 9 yards. So it's looking like last week. And then Braylon Allen, 3 carries for 3 yards. I mean, it's bad. It's tough sledding right now for the Jets offense. I'm actually shocked that they were able to get some points out of that because it's been really, really gross to watch. Darnold is 6 of 13 for 83 yards. Okay, he didn't throw a pick. I don't know why I was thinking he threw a pick. Nick Mullins was in for a play. That's interesting too. Okay, anyways, let's get back to the questions. Live creation. Morning, Ryan. Rough one to watch in London. Yep, that's what we were just saying. Jets look really bad, and the Vikings, the Jets defense actually hasn't done a terrible job. Like, if you actually take everything into account, they actually played pretty well considering the fact that the Jets offense can't get anything going. So the Jets defense, time of possession for this half has to be like Vikings probably had the ball 20 minutes and the Jets had it for 10. It has to be something like that. The Jets have not done anything moving the ball up until like the end of this quarter. Rich T, do I play Diggs or Thomas? Have PPR. Diggs or Thomas? I have a hard time sitting Diggs. It's a revenge game for him in Buffalo this week, or it's in Houston, but versus Buffalo this week. Diggs has been so consistent too. Like, Diggs, the thing about him is that obviously he's got the better quarterback than Brian Thomas does, right? So sometimes a wide receiver 2 on a team is better than a wide receiver 1 on a team. And listen, I think that Brian Thomas is actually a pretty solid play this week in a lot of ways. I actually think he's a pretty solid play. However, with Diggs, his role has been so consistent for the Buffalo for the Houston Texans, and it's like it's very sustainable. Like the touches, the targets that he's getting are very sustainable for fantasy success. They're high success, they're high percentage, they are at the red zone. Like, he's getting a lot of that work. So in a matchup, I think there's going to be a lot of scoring. That's the guy I prefer. I would play Diggs personally. Alexis Bolanos, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat. Sermon or Downs at the flex if Joe plays? Oh, definitely Downs. Yeah, not even close. I think that with Joe Flacco, apparently, like, he's looking like he's going to play. So I feel really confident saying that Downs is the guy. Like, I think the Colts are going to struggle to get anything going offensively. And truth be told, like, this is another theory that I have. Like, maybe it's right, maybe it's wrong. But I like to share my theories with you guys. I actually think, like, that Richardson could play today. Like, I'm not saying he's not hurt. I think he is hurt. I think he's definitely, like, at risk of re-injury. But I think if they really wanted him to play, he could play. I think there's actually an element to this where it's like, you know, obviously, like, they saw what we saw, right? Like, Joe Flacco consistently hitting their weapons much more than Anthony Richardson is. So it's like, I think they looked at this week and they were like, okay, well, we're not going to be able to run the ball because Sermon's not Jonathan Taylor, and they know that Richardson can't throw the ball. So can we put Joe Flacco in? It's like, I think that there's an element of truth to that. Honestly, I really do think there's a possibility that was part of it. So I actually am really happy, and as we all should be, that Flacco's playing. Everybody understands it. I've not seen one person defend Anthony Richardson's play. So I would definitely play downs the fact that we have Joe Flacco. I think is a massive, massive thing. Appreciate the super chat. That is how you get your question answered right away, is to throw a super chat in here. Until then, we'll just go down from top to bottom. Angel Celeste, good call on the Vikes defense. I appreciate it. Yeah, I mean, at this point, like, we've got 4 weeks with all these teams, right? We've got a full quarter of the season worth of work and resume built up by all these teams. And so just looking at the Vikings, like, even in games where it's been closer, like the Packers last week is a fantastic example of a defense that, even if they're allowing like 30 points, they're going to be good in fantasy because they're getting sacks, they're getting turnovers. Like, they're doing all these things that elite defenses in fantasy do. They've already scored a defensive touchdown today, like pick 6. I mean, yeah, Vikings defense really, really good in fantasy. They're this year's Dallas Cowboys. That's what they're looking like right now. Saucy Boa, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat. I'm sure there's a question coming from you, so I'll wait. I really wish we had a better Sunday morning game. Jets are just brutal right now. Saucy Boa, did I miss one earlier from you? I'm waiting on your question right here. Well, once I see your question pop up, I will answer it. Until then, let's go through a different question really quick. Yeah, just making one more run through, making sure I didn't miss your question earlier. Saucy Boa. Yeah, let's just go through. I'll wait for your question right here to come in, and then we'll go from there. Brendan Sherlock, what's going on? Raiders or Ravens defense? Yeah, that's one I'd go with the Raiders for sure. I really do think the Ravens are going to struggle this week. I do think so. I think the Ravens are in a situation here where it's like the Bengals matchup may sound good to some people, but the Bengals have historically had success against the Ravens. It's a divisional game. So these teams, they know Lamar Jackson better. And the Bengals are hitting their stride offensively. They can score points. When Burrow is on, that offense is really hard to stop. And by the way, like the Ravens last week, in fantasy football terms, not a fantastic defense at all. So that's kind of what we're looking at with the Ravens. I'll give the Raiders credit here. Like, they've got a good matchup on docket here against the Broncos. Like, the Broncos, like, as much as it was cool to see them win that game last week, especially if you're a Broncos fan, like, that team can't move the ball consistently. So, like, I do think that the Raiders actually could end up having a decent performance in fantasy for a defense. That might be the best scoring option on the Raiders team this week, honestly. So, yeah, I would personally go with the Raiders. Saucy Bo, I see you sent another one, so I'll address that one. I appreciate the super chat. One pick, half PPR flex. Brian Thomas Jr., T. Higgins, DJ Moore. You know, in a half PPR format, I think that I got to tell you, man, I think people are really sleeping on T. Higgins this week. I got to tell you this. Like, logically, I think that Brian Thomas Jr. is probably the better play because he's the wide receiver one. The matchup's really good for him as well. So, like, I think that logic would say Brian Thomas Jr. is a good play. And I think that you could go with that if you want to. My gut is actually telling me T. Higgins this week. That's what my gut is saying. My gut led me to Taysom Hill being right last week. My gut also led me to the Raiders defense being wrong weeks ago. So, I'm not saying trust my gut just because I'm telling you this right now. I'm just saying that I really do think people are sleeping on T. T. Higgins last week 10 targets, first week back 6. So he's averaging 8 targets per game since he's been back, and there's a lot of red zone targets in there. T has had actually historically strong games against the Ravens too. Not all of them have been strong, but he's had some of his strongest against the Ravens. I'm personally going to play T in this matchup. I get it. Logic says that Brian Thomas Jr. is probably the better play. Lots of targets last week, best wide receiver in the offense. I get all that. I'm going with my gut on this one and saying T. Higgins. But I don't have a problem, if you end up going with Brian Thomas Jr., but that's the way I feel personally. Appreciate the super chat. Back up to Alan Moore. Appreciate the super chat. PPR pick 2. Worthy, Downs, Tyreek, and Diggs. Okay. So I'm going to definitely go with Diggs for sure, because I think Diggs is definitely he's got a combo of the safest floor of the bunch, and he's also got, in my opinion, one of the higher ceilings of the bunch. I think it's probably between him and Tyreek who have the highest ceilings. I know Tyreek's got a low floor, but the ceiling I do think is actually relatively high. So Diggs has got to be one of them. And for me, like I said on the must start and sit wide receivers video yesterday, there's a point right now where I'm at where it's I'm not benching Tyreek at all costs. I'm not playing Javonte Williams over Tyreek this week. I just won't. I'm not benching him at all costs, but I'm looking for options and seeing if I can bench him. Josh Downs with Joe Flacco to me is that option personally. I like Xavier Worthy. I do. The matchup's tough. It's not for Downs. And I don't trust Worthy being able to provide a ton of more upside than he already has. And it's risky. It's a risky play if he can't do more than he has done the last several weeks, right? He's operating on limited opportunities. He's had 2 games that have actually popped off. So if he doesn't hit, and if he's not super efficient against a good defense this week on the limited work that he gets, I've got some issues there. I would just rather personally play Downs. That just feels like the better option here to me, because with Downs, you're getting the targets in a full PPR format. You're going to get targets. And, I don't know if he's going to hit the red zone again, the end zone again, but the Jags matchup is something that I like. So I would personally go with Downs, and I would go with Diggs in a full PPR format. Appreciate the super chat. Okay, down to FZ Ware. You're up next. Appreciate the super chat. Akers, Bigsby, Charbonnet, pick 1 PPR. I have Walker. Okay. I want to say that you should bench Cam Akers, but I just can't. 2 backup running backs. I'm not going to do that. I would say I'd play Akers personally, because with Cam Akers, at least you're going to get the touches that you won't get from Charbonnet or Bigsby. Because the one thing I will give Cam Akers is that he's handling the majority of the work in the backfield as far as carries go. The problem I have with him is that last week at least, he got taken out at the red zone, and Dare Ogunbowale was handling the targets and he wasn't. So the ceiling is low for all these guys. So I'd probably take the guy with the safest workload, which is Cam Akers here. Appreciate the super chat. Saucy Boa, appreciate you, Fanalysts. Good luck to everybody. We appreciate you. Everybody here is awesome. Drop a like in the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And I really appreciate the support. John D, appreciate the super chat. You were up next. Wandale or Chuba, full PPR. Uh, I'd go Chuba personally because I've been saying this all week too. I actually think people are going to be disappointed with Wandale this week. I get it, full PPR league, like it makes sense that he is, like, it makes sense for him to have like a, 10-point game, 12-point game just based on volume that he's going to get. My thing with it is that I look at it from a deeper football level, which is like a lot of my analysis is based on deeper football understanding and levels of watching the game that I think a lot of analysts on YouTube don't do. So when I watch this Giants offense, it all is engined. Like, Malik Neighbors is the engine of that offense. There's not a question to me about that one. So if he doesn't go, you know what else is going to suffer? The production that Wandale gets at or near the line of scrimmage, which is a lot of it. Like, Wandale Robinson, his opportunities have realistically been opened up this year more consistently than they have been ever for Wandale because Malik Neighbors is the downfield threat, and he's opening up opportunities for Wandale at the line of scrimmage. Well, the natural instinct is like, well, with Malik Neighbors out, he's going to get even more targets and probably downfield targets too. I don't disagree with that. I am completely not sold on the effectiveness of those because if you watch that game on Thursday night against the Cowboys, what did we see from Wandale? What we saw from Wandale was that he had a downfield target late in the game, gave him an opportunity to win the game. Daniel Jones gave them an opportunity to win that game. Wandale got behind the defense late in the game on that last drive and actually put a ball there that Wandale could have caught, and Wandale wasn't even tracking the ball. Like, it was embarrassing. So I don't think he's a very good downfield threat. I think he is what he is, and that's why they drafted Malik Neighbors, because they know they need that guy because he's elite. Wandale is not. He's a role player, and so I think he's going to be put into a role he's probably not comfortable with, and I just think the Giants are going to get crushed this week. Chuba, I get it. The matchup stinks against the Bears. It's not an easy matchup that I want to take advantage of necessarily, but for me, Chuba Hubbard, the way he's playing, like, I think that there's definitely a good chance he gets in the end zone. I actually think that the Panthers may be able to win this game just based on the Bears not being able to score very much. So I think that Chuba will be able to run the ball quite a bit. I'll take Chuba Hubbard in this matchup. Appreciate the super chat. G. Medina, what's going on, man? Good to see you in here today. Happy NFL Day to you as well. So my quarterback is Love. Full PPR at flex. Go Ford or Wicks. And at tight end, if McBride plays, play him hurt or a healthy Kraft. Leaning Kraft, thanks. Okay. So, first of all, full PPR at the flex, go Ford or Wicks. I'm going with Wicks because Wicks, legitimately, like, the matchup is great. Everything is great for Wicks, honestly. Like, Wicks is in a good situation where he's the wide receiver 2 on this offense now. It's Jaden Reed and it's Dontavian Wicks. And then that other option is Tucker Kraft, who we'll get into in a little bit here, based on the matchups that you have. So, Wicks personally, like, I just think with Ford, the matchup's fine for Ford. Like, the matchup's really good, actually, with Jerome Ford. I just hate the fact that he doesn't handle the majority of the opportunities. I mean, this guy is handling no more than, like, 10 or 12 carries per game. And he's not seeing a bunch of targets per game. So his upside realistically in fantasy is like, highest upside, like his ceiling is like 15 points. And his floor is like, 5 points basically. So Jerome Ford has like got this little window of points that he can do. So it's like, for me, I'm always going to go for the upside play. Wicks has that upside this week again. It's there with him again. So I would go with Wicks at the flex position personally. And at tight end, if McBride plays, play him or Kraft. I see your point. I do see your point here about that. I'm leaning towards playing Trey McBride if he plays. I just realistically can't see myself benching Trey McBride. I really can't. it just doesn't vibe well with me. I'm reading that he's expected to play today, and I get it. Like, they downgraded him to questionable yesterday. With Tucker Kraft, I look at this and I'm like, okay, with Tucker Kraft, he's the number 3 option this week, possibly number 4 because of Josh Jacobs, right? With McBride in the passing game, it's Marv and then it's McBride. And honestly, I think that's a big reason why the Cardinals struggled to move the ball last week is because they didn't have that threat. McBride is really good. Like, McBride very well could be the tight end 1 this year. So I just kind of struggle to bench McBride personally. If you want to go with your gut and go with Tucker Kraft, it's not a bad move. Like, the only time I'll try to sway you from going with your gut is if I think it's an egregiously bad move. This isn't a bad move. Like, Tucker Kraft, I think, actually does have a good week. I think he does. I just think that personally, for me, McBride has been so consistent. His target share is really consistent, and he's got the big play upside. So, and it's been really consistent. Like, this whole year, regardless of, like, who's been in, who's been out, Tucker Kraft is, kind of falling into a good place of luck right here. Last week, obviously, was a great week for him, but this week is even better because he's got all these options that have just fallen, right? So I just think for me personally, I would rather go with the guy who I believe can be the tight end 1 this year and has been really consistent. That's what I would do. But if you're feeling good on Tucker Kraft this week, go with your gut. Go with your gut on this one. But I personally playing McBride. Appreciate the super chat. Excuse me. Bucky Dent, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat. Wicks or Josh Jacobs, PPR A team. Ooh. Man. That's a good one. That's a really good one. That's a tough one. I think that, I said this on the must start and sit running backs video yesterday. This is kind of my last stand / last olive branch I'm going to throw him because I was really big on Josh Jacobs before the year. I thought he was going to have a great year in fantasy, and it just hasn't obviously come to fruition. It's been pretty, I wouldn't say it's been bad, it's been mid, right? Even on that 30 carry game that he had a couple weeks ago, it was he had nothing to show for it. And since then, he's been splitting the backfield 50-50 both weeks with Emmanuel Wilson. So it's it just sucks. It really does just suck because I want to confidently say to play Jacobs, but Wicks does look like a really high upside option this week. He does. I'd probably go with Wicks here. He's been just consistently rising for me. Ever since we got the news that Romeo Doubs got suspended for a full game. He got suspended. Obviously, he's not playing in this game, but he got suspended by the team for conduct detrimental to the team. So, not a good look for Romeo Doubs. And for Dontavian Wicks, the opportunity is going to be there for sure. So, I'd probably go ahead and play Wicks here over Jacobs, but I don't think Jacobs is a bad play. I really don't. I do think that Josh Jacobs actually has a lot of merit this week to play him. And in a lot of situations, I am going to play him. But it is my last stand. And I will not tolerate it anymore if he doesn't do well in this game. It's going to be an indictment on him for the rest of the year based on how he plays in this game. That's how I feel about it. Appreciate the super chat, Bucky. What's going on? Appreciate the super chat. Who could I reasonably get with Devontae and Brian Thomas Jr. trade? Who could you reasonably get? Reasonably, I think that you could get somebody like a Chris Godwin. I think you could reasonably get Chris Godwin. I think that you could reasonably get Stephon Diggs. Reasonably. get like maybe Mike Evans. That might be pushing it though. But that's exactly like the move I'm trying to make is by trading these two guys, you're essentially going to be trading one wide receiver 2 in fantasy, Brian Thomas Jr., and the other guy might end up being a wide receiver 1 in fantasy when he finds a new team. And like he's not going to, I really don't believe that he'll play for the Raiders again. I think he's done with the Raiders, which is a great thing for him. I actually love it because he has been wasted. Like his time has been wasted with the Raiders, especially this year. So Devontae, like when he goes to a new team, he in all likelihood he's going to be the wide receiver 1. Like I really can't picture him not because he's been really good still. So like with the team, you know, that could trade for him, the two teams I'm hearing are the Jets and the Saints. The Steelers are interested, I've read, but you know there's a bunch of teams that are interested. And the two that are sticking out is that he wants to play with his former quarterbacks, Carr and Rodgers. So both of those teams, he'd be the wide receiver 1, right? So with Devontae in mind, like you have to sell him as a wide receiver 2. So you're essentially wanting to get a wide receiver 1 upgrade. But obviously the reason I said reasonably you can only probably get those types of guys is because when you take it all into account, you know, the problem is that selling Devontae right now comes with the explanation of like, you have to sell him, right? Like he doesn't sell himself. Brian Thomas Jr. kind of selling himself right now. People are understanding him. For me personally, if I was in that position and I was trying to sell those guys, I would try to get someone like Mike Evans, Jaden Reed. You know, I would try to get Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, Marvin Harris Jr. Like that's who I'm going to go for. Amon-Ra St. Brown. That's who I'm personally shooting for because that's the only way it makes it worthwhile losing 2 startable wide receivers. Again, obviously Devontae is startable right now because of all this going on, but realistically, like when he goes to a new team, and it's going to happen here within the next week or two, I believe. Everything I'm seeing, it's going to happen here in the next like 2 weeks. So I just think that he'll be fine, and so I want to make sure I sell him with the intent of upgrading 2 wide receiver 2s to a wide receiver 1. So that's what I would do personally. Appreciate the super chat. FZ Ware, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat. Myers or Madison, flex PPR, and Higgins or Wicks. Okay. So, Jacoby Myers is gross this week, guys. He's really gross. I am struggling with Jacoby Myers, obviously, because of the matchup with Pat Surtain. That matchup is brutal, guys. Like, it's been proven, and I think people have been awoken by last week when I was saying that he was going to shut down Garrett Wilson. And to be clear, like, Garrett Wilson actually had a decent game. It was not a bad game at all, so I don't want to say it was, like, terrible. But I think people are woken up to the idea now that he's actually a really good wide receiver, or that he's a really good corner, and he's going to shut down opposing number 1s. That, by all accounts, looks like what's going to happen with Jacoby Myers this week. It looks like he's probably going to be, you know, lined up against Pat Surtain for a good part of this matchup. Madison is so gross to play to me personally, but I got to be honest, like, I probably will play Madison because at least this week he'll monopolize the backfield. It feels so disgusting telling you to play Madison. It really does. It feels wrong telling you to play Madison, but that's probably what I would do because Myers isn't Mike Evans, DK Metcalf, Garrett Wilson, right? Like, he's not one of those guys, and those guys have been shut down by Pat Surtain. I don't see how Pat Surtain doesn't follow Myers this week. Myers is a good wide receiver. He's their only real, like, consistent threat. So I don't see how he doesn't follow those guys. I'd go with Alexander Madison. It's a disgusting decision, but I'm gonna do it anyways. Appreciate the super chat. Up next, Jordan Eversole. What's going on? Appreciate the super chat. Need 2 flexes for full PPR Dynasty. Antonio Gibson, Cam Akers, Demarcus Robinson, Jacoby Myers, and Yeshivas. Full PPR. Well, again, I'm trying like crazy to not play Jacoby Myers this week because I just do not trust the. I do not trust the matchup with Pat Surtain on Jacoby Myers. Like that is a really, really frightening matchup. So the prospects of playing Jacoby Myers are very, very diminished to me personally. Now, I will say that Antonio Gibson, I actually do think I do not think Gibson's a bad play this week. I really do not. Matchup's really good against the Dolphins, first of all. Second of all, he's been getting 3.5 targets the last 2 games, basically. So you give him 12 carries or 14 carries with 4, 5 targets maybe. That's a good amount of opportunities against a bad defense who I believe they'll be able to keep up with because the Dolphins won't be able to score many points. I actually think Gibson's not a bad play this week. I really do not. So Gibson's going to be one of my guys this week. And I probably would go with Yeshivas in a matchup that I think is going to be high scoring. Because Yeshivas, like, what we have to understand about him is his role is actually really sustainable. Like, he's playing Tyler Boyd's role, but I would say he's been playing it better than Boyd has been playing it the last 2 years. Like, he looks actually like just a better player right now that we can count on more than we could with Tyler Boyd those last couple years. He's getting red zone work. He's getting plenty of targets. I actually think that the matchup for Yeshivas too this week is actually pretty good. Like, it's not a bad matchup at all. So I would go with Yeshivas, and I would personally go with Antonio Gibson. That's what I would do personally. Appreciate the super chat. Julian Sanchez, what is going on? Appreciate the super chat. Just got an update. Anthony Richardson has officially been ruled out. Anthony Richardson officially ruled out. He is inactive today, guys. Just got that notification. Julian Sanchez. Appreciate the super chat. FC Ware, I just realized I did not answer the second part of your question. Higgins or Wicks? I'm going with Higgins personally. I apologize. I screwed up the order right there. FC Ware, you did ask me about Higgins and Wicks. I am personally going with Higgins. Because, again, I really do think people are sleeping on how good of a situation T. Higgins is in right now. I really, really do. Like, Wicks is a good play. Wicks is not a bad play by any stretch of the imagination. I would play Dontavian Wicks in a lot of situations this week. I am personally going with T. Higgins, though. So that's my second part to your question. Apologize I missed that the first time around, but I will go with Madison at the flex, and I will go with T. Higgins in your other league with the flex. Appreciate the patience. Julian Sanchez, back to you. Start 2. Higgins, Wicks, or Tyreek? I am personally going to go with Higgins and Wicks. Yeah, I'm comfortable doing that. I really do think that with T. Higgins, again, I just explained it. 10 targets last week, 6 targets week 4. 8 targets per game is what T. Higgins is averaging in these games that he's been back. So he's been really good in fantasy. Or he's been really involved, rather, I should say. He's been really involved. With Dontavian Wicks, I just think that the upside is higher than it is with Tyreek. I mean, Tyreek literally has, like, next to no upside. That's the truth, right? Like, he literally has, like, almost no upside in this matchup. Or not even that. I'm sorry. Tyreek Hill has upside. He has upside, and the matchup is not bad. But just the way that the Dolphins are playing, it makes it so hard to hit the upside. Because he just doesn't have a quarterback who can hit him consistently. Like, that's not his reality right now. So I just think personally that he is, again, not someone I'm auto benching, like, no matter what. But for me, it is personally a situation where I'm like, okay, I think that he's going to be, if I can bench him, I will. If I can, I will. So that's kind of how I feel about it. So I would personally go with T. Higgins, and I would go with Dontavian Wicks. Appreciate the super chat. Julian Sanchez, appreciate the super chat. Also, Dalton or Kincaid? I'm sorry, Bowers or Kincaid? I would probably go with Bowers this week because Bowers is so, like, Bowers, there's nobody there, right? Like, again, Jacoby Myers is going to be blanketed by Pat Surtain, I think, a lot of this matchup. I think Bowers is going to have a lot of opportunities. I really do think he will. Kincaid, I don't like to sit Kincaid. I really don't. So I just really do think that that Bowers is the best play. I'd play Bowers over Kincaid myself, but Kincaid, I really don't. I mean, it's great that you have two good tight ends. Like, that is a good problem to have. Because at some point, if you have an injury, like, I'll give you an example of one of my leagues. I drafted Josh Allen, and I also drafted Jaden Daniels in, like, the 12th round. And I was, like, at the time, I was thinking, like, if Jaden Daniels hits, at some point, one of these two quarterbacks is going to be a good trade piece for me. But I want to hold on to them until I need to do something to let Jaden Daniels hit. I think everybody understands Jaden Daniels' upside is ridiculously high at this point. So I do think that we're at that point where Jaden Daniels or Josh Allen has a lot of fantasy value. So I'm in a situation right now where in that league I have Rashee Rice. And now I'm sitting there thinking, like, man, I could really use another upgrade because Rashee Rice was my wide receiver 3. He was sitting in my flex every week, locked and loaded. Now, obviously, we're going to be missing Rashee for at least the next month. And then it's been the weirdest thing, like, trying to figure out what's going on. I am kind of back to thinking we won't see him again this year. But, until then, I need an upgrade. So my point in saying that is that at some point, like, you're going to be able to use one of these guys as major trade bait. That's what I would do personally. But this week I'll go Bowers. Appreciate this super chat. When was next? Appreciate the super chat. Pick 2, Wicks, Jacobs, and Brian Thomas Jr. full PPR. I would go with Wicks, and I'd go with Jacobs. Yeah, I'd go with Jacobs and Wicks. Wicks because, like I said, I prefer him over Brian Thomas Jr. this week. My gut tells me that. And logically, I think Brian Thomas Jr. is a good play, like I said earlier, because he is in a situation where he is the wide receiver 1 in a matchup that's actually pretty good. Like, it's actually a really good matchup against the Indianapolis Colts this week. Wicks just has the better quarterback, the better upside, and also just as good of a matchup as well. And I'm going to take the shot on Jacobs myself personally. So, if you don't want to have two wide receivers on the same team, or two teammates starting for you, I understand that. Especially when Josh Jacobs has not been very good. I understand why people wouldn't want to do that. Brian Thomas Jr. is not a bad play. So if you did want to play Brian Thomas Jr., I don't think it's a bad idea. But I am personally going to be playing Wicks and Jacobs. So I'll leave you with this. Like, don't feel uncomfortable playing Brian Thomas Jr. If I had to pick between Wicks and Jacobs to play, I'd play Wicks. And you could play Brian Thomas Jr. over Jacobs. But I'm personally going to play Jacobs here with Dontavian Wicks. Appreciate the super chat. Patrick, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat today. PPR needs some upside plays. Sit 1, Javonte, Dowdle, Chase Brown. Or could drop 1 for Leggett and flex. Well, Leggett is actually not a bad option this week. He really is not. I do really like playing Chase Brown this week, though. I got to be honest. Like, I do think that playing Chase Brown is not a bad idea at all. I don't have a problem with dropping like Rico Dowdle for Xavier Legette. Like just in general, I really don't have a problem with that because, like, again, with Rico Dowdle, like the one thing that he has is he's got the upside from being the running back one at this point. Like, it doesn't look like Zeke is going to maintain any level of real involvement. Like, they're actually considering bringing up Dalvin Cook from the practice squad. Like, that's where they're at right now with Dallas running backs. It is so gross in Dallas with the running backs because they don't run the ball. They do not run the ball in Dallas. So I don't have a problem with doing that because he doesn't have much upside. I'd probably play Chase Brown still over. I'd play Chase Brown still over Legette, but I actually do like the move of just dropping Rico Dowdle and picking up Xavier Legette for future. That's personally what I would do myself. But I would personally today play Chase Brown because you're looking for upside here. And the problem with Legette this week is that the Bears are a tough defense, especially the secondary. Like, they're clamping down teams. So, like, I just personally would prefer Chase Brown in a matchup that, again, Ravens are brutally tough against the run, but I think there's going to be a lot of points here, and he could get a red zone opportunity, which that's all you really need. So that's what I would do. I would go with Chase Brown this week, but I really don't have a problem with dropping Rico Dowdle for Xavier Legette. I think that's actually a pretty decent move depending on what your depth is at the wide receiver position. Appreciate the super chat. FC Ware, yeah, I apologize again. I missed that first time. I'm going with Higgins over Wicks. I'll just add this in really quick. With T. Higgins, just think about, with Dontavian Wicks, just think about they had this dude last year, and he was really good for them. Like, he definitely was really good for them. But I also look at this and I think to myself, Tucker Kraft. Okay, I'm just getting an update. Aaron Rodgers down on the field holding his leg in pain. I just saw that. Well, that's not good, but obviously we don't know much, so not enough to go forward there. But I will say this with Wicks. Wicks last year was there, right? And Wicks was started out as a backup this year. So it's like, how likely is it going to be that he has a massive day? I think he will have a big day, but I also do think it's very, very possible that he gives you nothing. It would not surprise me at all. It really would not. So I personally am going with T. Higgins here. It's just a gut call for me, but I think they're both good plays. Next up, we had Nick Sergio. What's going on? Appreciate the super chat. Start one flex. Najee Pickens, Akers, or Wan'Dale Robinson. Appreciate it. I appreciate you being here. Let's see. Najee Pickens, Akers, or Wan'Dale Robinson. I think that Najee, I can't do it. I really just can't. Pickens is my guy this week because of the matchup that he has with Dallas' secondary. Pickens is just like, I actually feel more comfortable these days playing Pickens than I have really throughout his entire career because the quarterback play is a lot better. It's so much better than he's had the last several years. Like, the last several years, you know, playing with Kenny Pickett, Mitch Trubisky, Mason Rudolph, it's like, it's impossible to see any kind of, like, consistent upside with George Pickens. This year with Fields, like, Fields looks much better than what the Steelers have had the last 2 years. And Pickens is clearly the wide receiver one, obviously. And Dallas' secondary has been shredded. I mean, they have been horrible. So I just think that, with Pickens, he's a great upside play at this point, and he's always been a great upside play. But I feel a lot more comfortable with doing that. Okay, y'all are saying Aaron Rodgers is back. He's back in, so that's good. That's good. But yeah, I think that Pickens just has more upside than all three of those guys. Like Najee, again, the upside has been taken away from him. No goal line opportunities. No, he's not explosive enough to take open field stuff really for a lot. Like last week, it was kind of an exception. He had a really nice run after the catch, but for the most part, not very good. Akers, again, carries, but not. He's getting taken out of the goal line. No targets. And Wan'Dale Robinson, I've already said my piece about Wan'Dale. I don't think that he's going to be a good play this week. I would go with Pickens here. Appreciate the super chat, Nick. Good to see you in here today. Anthony was next up. Appreciate the super chat. Week 5, Wan'Dale or Odunze, Ramondre or Tyrone Tracy. I'll go with Wan'Dale over Rome. I really don't think that Rome can be played this week. I really, really don't. I know. Trust me, it sucks. I get it. Like, Rome Odunze is a good player. I just think that right now it's just not worth doing. Like, Caleb Williams himself has not been very good, right? He's not been good enough to sustain 2, let alone 3 good wide receivers in fantasy. He's barely been able to sustain 1. So, and just looking at numbers here, like with 2 games with Keenan Allen there, Rome Odunze has had 2 targets combined in both games. 1 target in each contest. It's not good, right? So, like, there's just no upside there. Wan'Dale at least will get the targets. So, I will say, even if he gets 10 catches for 20 or 30 yards, I'll play Wan'Dale Robinson. And then Ramondre or Tyrone Tracy, eek. I look at this, and I'll tell you why I'm going to play Ramondre. I'm going to play Ramondre because I look at these 2 matchups here. I genuinely think the Giants will struggle to move the football. I mean, you take away Malik Neighbors, who I said earlier is the engine of that team. He is the engine of that offense. You also add insult to injury, and Devin Singletary goes down. So now they have Tyrone Tracy Jr., Eric Gray is not out of the mix, and you have Wan'Dale Robinson and Darius Slayton and Daniel Jones. Like, against the Seahawks defense, it's going to be a really, really brutal situation, I think. I'm personally going to play Ramondre because his matchup, he's going up against the Dolphins, weak defensively, and Ramondre, even though he may not see a bunch of opportunities, I actually think they'll be able to move the ball better than the Giants. I really don't think the Giants will do anything this week. Like, I think they're going to be abysmal to play fantasy options in. I'm going to go with Tyrone Tracy, or I'm going to go with Ramondre over Tyrone Tracy. So I'll go Wan'Dale, and I'll go with Ramondre Stevenson. Appreciate the super chat. I can't bring myself to start two Giants options this week. That's also really what it boils down to. Car Chisel, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat. PPR 2-2. Trade Monty for Mixon. I have Gibbs as well. First of all, I will say this. Don't ever feel bad about playing both Monty and Gibson. Don't feel bad about it. I'm sorry, Monty and Gibbs. Because they're both in line every week to get you bare minimum like 12 to 16 points. That's bare minimum each. One of them is probably going to hit 20, and the other one's probably going to stick around 15. Like, they're both giving you legit upside every single week. So I have no problem playing both of them every single week, both together. However, I will say that in your situation here, I can understand wanting to go for the bigger upside, right? So ordinarily, I'm going to say that Gibbs has better upside than David Montgomery does. That's how I feel. I do think he has better upside. Mixon definitely has more upside here. And I do think that the only thing that makes me nervous here is that you're 2-2. We don't know what his status is and if he's coming back. So it's tough. I would probably make the deal. Because what we've seen is that Mixon has, he did practice a little bit. I don't think he did practice on Friday, actually. So I'm a little nervous about that situation there, but I probably would go ahead and take this deal. I might wait a week, though. I probably would not do this before game time today. I'd probably wait a week to do this and get the last little bit of production I can. Well, actually, the Lions are on bye, so you can't play them either way. I would still wait a week and just see what we can get from Mixon's practice report this week. That's what I would personally do. Appreciate the super chat. Julian Sanchez, what's going on, man? Good to see you again. Brian Robinson just made active. Should I start? Again, most of the time I'm going to say yes. I got a couple questions yesterday. I saw that people were like, are you really that confident in Brian Robinson Jr.? Because I'm scared. And listen, I get it. I get why people are scared about this one. It makes sense. Brian Robinson Jr. does have the knee injury, and he's taking on the Browns, who Browns I don't view as as weak of a matchup as they historically have been. I'm not as worried about that one as I usually would be, but of course they are still a good defense, right? So an injured Brian Robinson Jr. and stronger Browns defense than most defenses are. It depends on who you're asking about. Most times I'm going to tell you yes, though. Brian Robinson Jr. over Devon Achane is a no-brainer for me. I'm playing Brian Robinson Jr. Brian Robinson Jr. over Trey Sermon, 100%. Brian Robinson Jr. over Josh Jacobs, I personally would do it. Brian Robinson Jr. over, James Conner? No, I play James Conner, right? I would play James Conner, but Brian Robinson Jr., I've got no reservations, honestly. I really do not. I just look at it and I'm like, it depends on who you've got to play other options wise, but I would say most of the time I'm going to play Brian Robinson. I have him in a bunch of redraft leagues. He's in my lineup right now. In my lineup. I had him in there before I started going live because I had heard that he was probably going to play. So I just put him in there and I was like, okay, if anything changes, I'll just make the adjustment. While I'm live, you guys can enjoy that. But I don't have to make that adjustment. I've got him locked and loaded in there. So that's what I'm personally doing. Appreciate the super chat. Next up, we have Zach L. was next. Appreciate the super chat. Should I trade Reed for James Cook? Ooh, they're both really good, obviously. I like both options. It depends on what you need. I don't think that you're getting there's no real value difference to me personally. The only difference in value would be what do you need more, right? Do you need a wide receiver more or do you need a running back more? Because I guess the one thing I'll say about that is if you think you're getting a major value pickup from getting James Cook, I don't think that's the case personally. I think the case is that you're gonna get with Jayden Reed, you're going to get as many spike weeks as you will with James Cook. You may not get the consistency that you'll get from James Cook, but I have all the confidence in the world that James Cook and Jayden Reed basically are going to hit the same level ceiling games. They're both that good. So the only value difference really is which position you need more. Because if you need running backs more, then it makes sense, right? makes sense why you'd want to do this trade. They're both of equal value to me. And if you need a wide receiver more, I would say, well, probably not. Like, unless you really wanted to, unless you felt really comfortable about your running back, your wide receiver 2, and you wanted a good flex option. Like, James Cook is like a great flex option. Like, if you have 2 solid running backs already, right? So I think it's situational. It's situational. The only way I would take this trade is if I needed a running back more. And if I needed a wide receiver more, I'm going to hold on to Jaden Reed. Because they're both, again, of equal value. You're not really getting an upgrade as far as fantasy value goes by getting Cook. They're both fantastic. So that's how I feel personally. Situational. Appreciate the super chat. Nate Dogg, what's going on, my man? Keenan or JSN? Going skydiving in an hour. Have fun skydiving, Nate Dogg. It's always good to see you in here. I'd go with Jackson-Smith-Njigba personally. Keenan is not a bad play this week, though. I know you're a Bears fan, Nate Dogg. So if you feel like your gut's telling you Keenan Allen, go with your gut, man. Go with your gut. I'm not on board with it because I think that Jackson-Smith-Njigba... I will say this, though. Jackson-Smith-Njigba not only plays Russian roulette every week with Tyler Lockett on who gets the most fantasy value and the most targets that week, he also is in a matchup that I think they're going to crush the Giants in. So they may not throw the ball that much in the second half. So he's going to have a lot of front-loaded production in the first. So that's the only thing I'll say about that, is that I do think there's potential for big issues here with JSN's upside. With Keenan, no, I changed my mind, actually. I'm going to go with Keenan and Allen. I'm going to go with Keenan. I just talked myself out of it because Keenan, I think is going to be in the more competitive matchup, and I do think that he will get more targets than he did last week. And based on the fact that he came in this week, was taken off the practice floor early in the week, by the way, so he had basically a full week of practice, that shows me that he's going to get more involved this week. I'd go with Keenan Allen. Appreciate the super chat. Make sure to have fun. Be safe skydiving, man. Skydiving sounds fun. I've never done it personally. I probably would do it. What would you guys rather do? Would you rather go bungee jumping or skydiving? Just curious. Put it in the chat. Let me see what the room is like. Caleb Hamilton. Appreciate the super chat. You were up next. Full PPR. Flex Whittington or Keenan Allen? I'd go Keenan, yeah. I'd go Keenan Allen. Listen, with Whittington, I've heard a lot of excitement for Jordan Whittington this week. I don't blame people because with Whittington, it definitely is he's getting, from what I've seen on film, and I haven't watched the Rams quite as much closely as I have with the Cardinals, for example. I've been watching them more closely than the Rams. With Whittington, what I've seen is that he gets a lot of those crosser routes that are important in this offense, sort of like what Puka Nacua was doing for this team. So it's I can understand the intrigue with him. I'm not there yet personally. I think that Keenan is going to be, I think he's going to get a lot of targets today. I think we're going to see another 8 to 10 target game from Keenan. Because, again, that week 1 game, it was he got peppered with targets. And the thing was, he was getting, high percentage throws for Caleb Williams to complete. And that's Keenan's role in an offense, right? That's why Justin Herbert loved Keenan Allen, because he was getting all those high percentage targets. So, yeah, I just think personally I would go with Keenan over Whittington. I personally just kind of want to see with Whittington first. Whereas Keenan, I kind of feel more comfortable doing that one. Appreciate the super chat. Next up, Nate Dogg, you're back. Strange, Likely, or Komet? Ooh. I'd probably play Brenton Strange, yeah. With Likely, the matchup is not bad. The Ravens tight ends scare me right now. I mean, I realistically cannot say that I would not. I cannot say that I would play a Ravens tight end. And the irony is, like, I'm actually playing Ravens tight ends in 2 of my leagues. They're both dynasty leagues that I have to play Isaiah Likely in because I have Evan Ingram in one of those leagues and I have David Njoku in the other. Let's actually, speaking of that, I'm going to see if I can get an update on David Njoku. But yeah, with Kmet, again, I just think that, especially if you're playing Keenan Allen, Nate Dogg, like, I know it's going to be hard for you to hear this, but I've been saying it and I will say it again to you. As a Bears fan, I know it's tough. Caleb Williams has not been very good, though. Like, he's getting better, and I do think he's going to be good in the long term. But right now, he's not providing a lot of targets in that offense upside. So that is the unfortunate reality with Caleb, is that there's not enough to go around. And especially with Keenan back in the fold, it definitely shrunk Cole Kmet's upside last week. I think it does the same thing again this week. Appreciate the super chat. Rock out. What's going on? Appreciate the super chat. Stevenson, Dowdle, pick up DeMarcus Robinson PPR. I'm not playing DeMarcus Robinson. Nope. Not doing it. Can't do it. I think that Dowdle and Stevenson are really, really close for me. They really are. Stevenson, like I said, I think the matchup actually does provide Stevenson pretty decent upside based on a target basis, an opportunity basis, I should say. Like, I think that he actually could sustain pretty decent efficiency in this matchup if he gets the opportunities. And, like, from everything I've read, like, Gerard Mayo is still going to be, like, he's still going to be playing. But everything I've read is that, like, Antonio Gibson's going to get the start. And based on what I've seen, like, Antonio Gibson, from what we've seen over the weeks, 3.5 targets per game. So you give him 12 carries, right? Like, that's going to be good for Gibson and not good for Ramondre. So, yeah, I would personally play Dowdle just because of opportunities. The Steelers' defense is definitely brutal, but they were beaten by Jonathan Taylor in the bunch. And obviously, Rico Dowdle is not Jonathan Taylor. Like, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying the Steelers' defense, like, it can be beaten. This is something that this is the time of the year, actually, where I start to really show my frustration as a Steelers fan, because for years and years, like, people, like, the Steelers' defense starts out hot. Everybody's like, dude, they're an elite defense. And it's like, listen, they're very good defensively. Obviously. They better be good defensively. They have the most expensive defense in the league. Look it up. It's the most expensive defense in the league. They better be good. The problem is we need like consistent great performances. And the reality is, like, when an offense takes TJ Watt out of the game, their defense is beatable. So if the Cowboys do it tonight, Dowdle becomes immediately much more interesting option. So I would play Dowdle over Stevenson just because of Dowdle's deficiencies in the opportunity area. Appreciate the super chat. Chris West, what's going on? You're up next. Appreciate the super chat. Deontay Johnson or James Conner today? They're both great options. You've got good problems. I'll say this, though. James Conner, I'm going to play him. Most of the time, I'm going to play James Conner over Deontay Johnson, so that's obviously a factor. I'm not going to lie and say it's not a factor. But the other factor is that the 49ers are banged up. Like, their defense is still banged up. Their offense has gotten better. Their offense is definitely more healthy, but their defense has been banged up. I'm going to look up Fred Warner really quick and see if Fred Warner is playing. Fred Warner's going to play. Okay, that's good. That's good. He was a true questionable at some point. Talonia Ufunga, their safety is not having injury designation, so that's good as well. A weaker, banged-up 49ers defense that their front seven is taking a major hit because of Javon Hargrave being out. I think there's a lot there to play James Conner. Deontay is going up against a brutal Bears defensive matchup. Like, that is a really tough matchup. I don't think it affects his performance enough. Like, I think they'll both be good options in fantasy. You've got good problems, though, right? Like, so we're splitting hairs here. I would go with James Conner most of the days over Deontay Johnson, and I do think that there's plenty of injuries in this 49ers defense that makes them, it makes them beatable. The Bears, their secondary is so good, man, and they're healthy. Like, I think it's tough. So we're splitting hairs here. They're both great plays, but I would personally go with James Conner. And again, Chris, appreciate the super chat today. Josh Moore, you were up next. Appreciate the super chat today. Need help. Need to choose between Madison, Sermon, and Hunt for RB2. Also pick 2 to start. Debo, DK, Christian, and Dontavian Wicks. Okay. Madison, Sermon, and Hunt for RB2. I'm playing Hunt for sure. Not a question to me, actually. I mean, it's not a dumb question. Like, there's obviously, like, I don't think there's dumb questions in fantasy or in life. But I think that for me personally, like, Sermon, I don't trust him as a player. The matchup's good. I don't trust Trey Sermon, the player. And I look at this also, and I'm like, Madison. Someone asked me earlier yesterday. They were like, how can you say? Because I was ragging on Madison on the must start and sit running backs video yesterday, and someone was like, okay, how can you say that Madison sucks? Like, how can you say it's all luck, right? Like, how can you say it's all luck with Madison because of the fact that he's gotten in the end zone, 3 times out of the year? And I said, listen, like, it's fair enough, I guess, on that point. Like, he did get better opportunities, and obviously Zamir White's out this week, so I get it. The Broncos matchup's tough. Kareem Hunt, just with the offensive upside that he has with Kansas City, and the way he looked last week, I think he looked really good. He definitely is going to be the starter, and he doesn't have an injury designation. So no need to worry about him being injured in that game. I'd go with Hunt personally, and then pick 2 to start. Debo, DK, Christian Kirk, Dontavian Wicks. I'm going Debo and DK still, yeah. I just think I can't. Kirk definitely doesn't move the needle enough for me, and Wicks doesn't move the needle enough for me to go with him over Debo or DK. Debo, listen, like, Debo is going to hit a big week. That's his nature, and DK is just as prone to doing that as well. So I personally go with Debo and DK. And again, I get the hesitancy on Madison, with the running backs. I'm personally going to go with Hunt, though, myself. So I'd go Hunt, Debo, and DK. Appreciate the super chat. Good to see you in here today, Josh. Dr. David Lazarique, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat. Keep Justice Hill or grab Mostert. Honestly, I have no interest in Mostert. I really don't. Like, it doesn't... With Mostert, like, this offense is so garbage. It's so garbage without Tua. So until Tua is back, I don't think that there's not even enough upside to sustain Tyreek Hill and Devon Achane, who, in my opinion, are their best 2 offensive weapons. There's definitely not enough for Jalen Waddle, and there's definitely not enough for Raheem Mostert or anybody else that you want to throw in there, right? It's bad. I mean, it's really, really bad. At least Justice Hill is on a really good offense, and if Henry were to go down in the, God forbidden event, I'd rather keep Hunt at this, or I'd rather keep Justice Hill at this point. That's how I feel about that. Appreciate the super chat today. Gabriel Polk, what's going on? Good to see you in here today. You mentioned Tyreek or Brian Thomas Jr. Seems so scary. Yeah, I actually saw something about it in the chat too, which is that I saw in the chat somebody was like saying that I was giving stupid advice for sitting Tyreek Hill. Listen, I understand the point with this one, but it's like I said, I'm personally in a situation where it's like, if I can bench him, I will. I'm not going to bench him no matter what, but if I can, I will. Brian Thomas Jr. Yeah, he is in the rain. Let's see what the weather really looks like. Let's get an accurate depiction of the weather in that game. Because I've been hearing it is going to be a rain game. Is there anything on X that I can find? Let's go to X really quick, see if I can find anything on this weather. Jags, Colts. I mean, it doesn't look like, from what I'm seeing at least, it doesn't look like it's coming down or anything like that. Like, it's definitely not ideal. But it doesn't look like tons of rain, like that it's just pouring down or anything like that. I don't know. I think Flacco really, or I'm sorry, Lawrence definitely is nerve-wracking. I would say, like, I personally am still going to play Brian Thomas Jr. I think. I don't know. That's tough. I might go ahead and play Tyreek, actually. I might do it, yeah. That Trevor Lawrence has been so bad in good weather this year. Like, I don't want him in bad weather. Like, that's kind of how I feel about it. But, I mean, Tyreek's options stink at quarterback, too. So, it's hard. I think I probably would go back with Tyreek Hill. I probably would do it. Yeah, I'd play Tyreek Hill over Brian Thomas Jr. this week. Appreciate the super chat. Rock out, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat. You were up next. Murray or Geno? I'd probably go with Murray or Geno. You know, Geno, I just don't really think that the matchup, like, Kyler's matchup is obviously, like, difficult on the surface level because of the 49ers defense. Like, they've done really well for the most part. I actually think this is going to be a really competitive game. And it could be it could be a shootout. I really do think it could be a shootout. So, I actually am no reservations playing any Cardinals options this week. Geno, I do think that they could be really pounding the Giants really early and not needing to throw the ball by, like, mid-third quarter. I think it's very possible that that's what happens here. So I'm personally going to go with Kyler Murray in this matchup. I just think that his upside is higher because of I think that they'll just have better opportunities and for longer than Geno does. So I'd go with Murray personally. Appreciate the super chat. I get it though. Murray was a massive disappointment last week. Like, massive. So I get the hesitancy. Jules, you're up next. Appreciate the super chat. Full PPR start 3. Achane, B-Rob, Downs, Wandale. I would go with Brian Robinson for sure. I would go with Downs for sure. And Wandale's not going to move the needle for me with Achane. I'll go with Achane. I just think that Achane, like, again, he's very much in the same boat as Tyreek, where it's like it's hard to trust the upside in this matchup. Ultimately, I just think that he is going to be in better position than Wandale is, because again, I think Wandale, like, he's in minimal upside territory too, and I think that his matchup is even more brutal than Achan's is. So I'd go with Achan, B-Rob, and Downs. Appreciate the super chat. Nate Dogg, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat. Chase Brown or Josh Downs? I would say Josh Downs. Now that we know that that Flacco's the guy, I prefer Josh Downs. Even in the matchup, like, I get it. The matchup is not, apparently it's bad weather. I saw it. I watched it, some videos, and it's like, it doesn't look terrible. It obviously is less than ideal, but it doesn't look awful, right? So I honestly think that Downs does have good upside in this matchup with Flacco, and so does Chase Brown. Chase Brown does have good. He's not a bad play this week. I want people to understand that he is not a bad play. But I'll go with Josh Downs personally. Appreciate the super chat. And then King Autumn, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat today. With Kittle still listed as questionable to play, but being reported as expected to play, should I risk it or start Njoku instead? I'm pretty sure Kittle's playing, but let me just double check for you really quick. George Kittle. Yeah, I mean, he's obviously playing at the 3 o'clock slate. I'm going to play Kittle, yeah. I've got no issues with that. Usually those reports aren't wrong. Like, when they come from, like, Rappaport or Schefter, like, usually they're not wrong. If they're being said that they're expected to play, like, I've very rarely seen it to where they don't end up playing, unless there's a setback pregame. I would personally play Kittle because Kittle's upside is so high. Like, Kittle literally is like top 2, top 3 tight end territory. Like, for me, it's like McBride, him, and then Brock Bowers. Like, those are my top 3 tight ends right now in fantasy football. So, like, I think it's, and I think from there's a major teardrop. So with Njoku being injured, and, you know, the fact that he hasn't been available either, like, that's uncomfortable to me personally. So I'm gonna go with Kittle, because, like I said, very rarely do they get that stuff wrong. Like, very rarely do they say that they're expected to play, and I've seen it at least where they don't end up playing. So I'm gonna play Kittle for sure. Appreciate the super chat though. Name Jivraj, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat. Pick one: Roshan Johnson, Cam Akers, Tyrone Tracy, and you said down there it's a full PPR league. Roshan, Cam, Tyrone Tracy. I can't play Roshan, so Roshan's out. I just cannot do it. They really did. The one thing I will say for DeAndre Swift is they did really commit to him. Like, they showed their commitment to him. And obviously they paid him all that money in the offseason, so it's like they wanted him to be the guy. He comes in, he does well last week. There's no way Roshan Johnson's going to take anything that's really valuable. The only thing that gave him a game-saving week was his touchdown last week, right? And I get it, the match is actually pretty good for him versus the Panthers today, but I'd still personally go with I would not go with Roshan Johnson, rather. Cam Akers or Tyrone Tracy, that's really what it comes down to for me. I think I would probably end up going with Cam Akers because he's on the better offense. And I just can't realistically put any excitement into a Giants running back. Like, that team I really think is going to get crushed today. Like, if they were playing the the Jaguars or if they were playing the Dolphins, I'd have actually a pretty decent amount of enthusiasm playing Tyrone Tracy, I think. I think I would. But they're not doing that. Like, that's not the scenario this week. They're playing the Seahawks defense, who's going to come in livid because they got embarrassed last week. And I think that a couple of their defensive linemen, from what I saw earlier in the week, have gotten healthy and they're going to be playing this game. So, Tyrone Tracy's into her tough sledding. At least Cam Akers has the better offense and I think can put up points this week. I'll go with Cam Akers over Tyrone Tracy. Appreciate the super chat today. And then Roger Maher. What's going on, man? Appreciate the super chat. Full PPR, Deontay Johnson or Scary Terry at the flex? I'm going with Deontay. I get it. The matchup for Deontay is not good. With Terry, like I said earlier in the week, there's still something that's holding me back with Terry. First of all, we saw him the first 2 weeks of action, right? Like, him in the first 2 weeks of action was not very... Like, people literally asked me, like, can I drop Terry? Should I drop Terry? And I said, I wouldn't do it personally yet, but I understand if you want to. I personally wouldn't. Terry now is like, it's a complete 180, right? Like, it's a complete 180. People are all back in on him. I'm not doing it because I do think that ultimately Deontay, like, has proven both with Bryce Young and with Andy Dalton that he's the best wide receiver of the bunch. Not only the best, but he's been the most consistently targeted wide receiver. So I would personally go with Deontay Johnson here. I think Deontay is just the safer option and just as high of a ceiling play as Scary Terry. Appreciate the super chat. Well, we're losing viewers fast. I get it. It's a weird Sunday. I hate these London games, guys, to be honest with you. These London games always screw up the morning for all of us. So we're losing viewers fast. We're going to answer a couple questions at the bottom here just to make sure that I get as many questions in as possible. So let's start with Andrew Temple. What's going on? Sermon or Tracy, the battle for my RB2 spot in week 5 is ugly. Not confident in Mostert coming back on that offense, so it's between those two. I would go with Sermon personally. I think Sermon's in the better situation, the better matchup, and his offense is better in general. Alexander Kimmy, I'm just going to start speed racing through these. Leggett or Worthy, I would go with Worthy personally. Watergum Tommy, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat. I like that name. Brian Robinson or Zach Moss, I would go with Brian Robinson Jr. for sure. I don't have a problem with playing Brian Robinson this week. I really don't. Like, the knee, it's not great, but I think that Brian Robinson Jr., the offense is just the way they're playing right now. I want a piece of it. Zach Moss is going up against the number 1 rush defense of the year so far, so I'd rather play Brian Robinson. He's just been better than Zach Moss. Appreciate the super chat today. To get back into it, Alberto Enrique de Vera, Scary Terry, or Wicks? Ooh, that's tough. I'd probably go ahead and play... I'd go with Wicks. Yeah. I think the matchup upside is better with Wicks, and again, I have more trust in Jordan Love to deliver the football to a bunch of different guys than I do with Jaden Daniels. I'd go with Wicks. Dr. Clutch, what's going on? 10-man PPR flex spot, Brian Thomas Jr., DeAndre Swift, or Javonte. I'd go with Brian Thomas Jr. personally. Even in the rain, I think that he's just the better upside play. Rowan Cox, I'm doing it. Starting Wicks over Scary Terry and Tyreek. I want to have some fun. I love it, man. Go with the gut and take the deep shot. I love it. Roger Maher, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat. Jaden Daniels or Fields at quarterback? I got to stick with Jaden. Jaden has just been too hot, man. Like, Jaden is on a freaking heater. I get it. The matchup is better for Justin Fields. And Justin Fields is not a bad play, to be honest with you. I can't take Jaden Daniels out when he's on this heater. I cannot realistically advise anybody to do that. So I would go with Jaden Daniels here. Appreciate the super chat. We're speed racing through questions at the bottom, guys, because I know we're losing viewers fast, and we're all trying to get our lineup set. I just hate these freaking London games in the morning. They screw up my morning. Everybody's morning, I think. Ject, Akers or Hunt? I would go with Hunt for sure. Terry or Flowers? I would go with Terry. RL, start Stevenson or Gibson? I'd play Gibson for sure. Gibson's going to have the majority of the volume. Aspen Chero, pick 2, chat. Help me, please. Etienne, or Shaheed? I would go with Etienne and Shaheed. Personally, I would go with Etienne and Shaheed. Would you start Flacco or Lawrence? I would go ahead and play Flacco. Yeah, I just have more trust in Joe Flacco this time than I do with Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence literally, he's a bum. I mean, realistically, he's a bum. I don't mean to get into a Trevor Lawrence rant, but the dude got paid, top-tier quarterback money. This guy is coming off, the worst season of his career, and he's already been playing terribly again. It's an embarrassment. It's an embarrassment, really. Patrick, PPR, pick 2, Javonte, Chase Brown, Leggett. I would personally go with Chase Brown and Leggett. I like the upside for both of them better. And then Shaheed or Coleman. I am personally going to go with... that's tough. I think I'm going to go with Keon Coleman. I'm going to go with Keon Coleman in that matchup. I think Keon Coleman has tons of upside without Khalil Shakir. That offense is going to score points. Both of them will. We're going to wrap it up a little early today, guys. Again, we're losing viewers. It's one of those weird Sunday mornings, guys. So let's go enjoy the rest of this game. It's actually getting pretty good against the Jets and Vikings. Let's go enjoy that. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel on the way out, and I will see you guys on tonight's waiver wire video, so make sure to stay tuned. And everybody, let's go get a win this week.